What's going on here? I probably need to explain it to you because they had to explain it to me. But I asked Eldon Ford if he would do some pictures and stuff. One of the new art forms is what they call video jockey. You've heard of a disc jockey with music, but they do this. What they do is they've heard the music many times, and for each segment of the music, they have many, up to 10 or 15 slides that are ready to go. But what comes on the screen, they are really not sure until they actually feel the moment. And so back in the back room, Eldon Ford is heading this crew, and Danny Udrea is back there. My son Todd Taylor is back there. Matthew Webster is back there, and Pastor Dan Stevens are back there in the choir room. Doesn't look like a choir room, it looks like a computer guru center. But what they're doing is all of these screens, so as I play, there they are. So, just lest you think there's a camera here that's panning on you so they know what you're doing too. It's been interesting being an organist here for 26 years. The most unusual things have happened. I remember the children's story where they brought some birds in and the birds flew up into the pipes and started bouncing from one to another, throwing them way out of tune. And we didn't know how to capture them, how to get them. And then of course, they do what birds do. They started pooping all over the pipes. So that was kind of one of the fun ones. And then there was Peter Bath, who brought a sheep in, during the Easter season, was talking about the sheep. And every time I played the pedal notes, this thing would let off this terrible baa and that kind of stuff. So we can deal with animals. We've had the birds, we've had the sheep. Children are most fun. And particularly those kids that I know, they like to come climb up on the bench and play with me. And I've got this little knob over here that'll just shut off the bottom keyboard. So they can just play along, just having fun. And we've gotten along just very, very well. So it's dealing with children and the birds. And I remember one of the first weeks that I was here that Melvin West came back. He was my major professor, sitting in the audience. And I wanted him to know that I could prepare the choir, and we had a great service plan. And we had just put fire doors in here. And I reached for the fire door. Just on the other side of it, Bill Davis came through. And, little tiny me went flying through the air. And so Ken Christman, Dr. Christman, takes me over to the ER. He says, don't look at anybody, don't smile, and just keep going. He takes me over there, stitches some things up, puts a great big old bandage here. It was kind of dripping. We did the whole service with. So, we can handle almost anything except for composers. A composer, people wonder why you want to do music of people who've been dead for 200 years. A live composer. I remember the person who just wrote the piece I played, Richard Purvis. The first time that I met Richard Purvis, forgot cell phones. How about this? That's not a challenge, but you know, cell phones go off. We organists know how to handle that too. All right, what am I going to play next? Oh, yes. The next piece of music that I chose to play, I actually chose this because it's the first piece of music I ever played on this organ back in the 70s. And I thought it would be really fun to do again. And besides that, I got to play it for the composer. Now, I was at Indiana University, and John Longley came over to the university. It was one of his unscheduled trips. But he was there and brought him to the organ department, and he was offered to listen to some of the students. And they offered him the Bach St. Anne Fugue, and he said, And one of them said, well, what about, would you like to hear the Franck Chorale? And they said, well, what about the Reger Te Deum? And they looked at me, and Wilma Jensen says, did you have something to play? And I said, well, I brought the Longley Dialogue. And he says, the Dialogue, I know. So I spent the next hour with Longley playing the Dialogue, and he got it the way he wanted it. So let's see what they can do and what we can do with Longley's Dialogue for the Mixtures. It's interesting to play with all of this going on. I've learned that I have to have music up here and I have to watch it, and if I take my eyes off it, this is a whole lot more interesting. Okay, the next piece you're going to hear is the biggie. This is the one that you can be bored for the next 18 minutes and you can take your cell phones out or do whatever you want. But I am going to play you a major piece of music. This music is by Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn had a birthday yesterday also. We share that little problem in common. Now, Mendelssohn went over to England and he wrote his Elijah. The famous Elijah was performed at the Berkshire Festival in London, or in England, and they commissioned him to write some organ sonatas. One of the publishers commissioned this. Now, according to the internet and according to different things we put together, probably Mendelssohn never heard these pieces. He wrote them for organs that actually didn't exist at the time, but he was challenging the organ builders of London to build a better organ so that they could do some more interesting music. Now, a couple of things that you're going to hear, it's in 4 movements, so the etiquette is that you don't want to applaud until you get 4 more pieces, okay? You can just sit there and sleep between them. But the first piece, okay, I went home at Christmas time and there was this television program on and this guy was trying desperately to get all of his kids and his family and his dog and everybody down to church. Okay, it kind of sounds the first movement like that, okay? You're going to get all this stuff and all of these notes that Mendelssohn is doing, and all of a sudden, Mendelssohn, being very German, puts this German hymn right in the middle of this piece for the English to enjoy. You know, they're back then, they were having those little fun. The second piece, I don't know how many weddings has been played at. You'll recognize it, it's probably come from several weddings, and now you'll know what the whole work is. The third piece, I don't even know how to describe it, it's just weird. The kind of front and back and front and back, but you know, after you get to the point of no more tolerance, then it breaks out into this wonderful last movement. The wonderful last movement, my mother, who was not particularly an organist, in fact, couldn't figure out why one of her sons had to enjoy the organ of all things. But nonetheless, Mother used to call this the cat song because she described it as the cat stretching out on the keyboard, you know, and finally at the end he gets his reward. So the Mendelssohn Sonata, you got 4 pieces, about 18 minutes here. Enjoy. You have no idea how glad I'm that's over with. Oh, okay. Every 10 years, for some reason in my life, on my birthday, I've managed to play a recital. When I was 10, yeah, believe it or not, I had just had a couple of years of lessons. I could play a few things. Now the problem was that we didn't have an organ, and we lived on the farm and there was no organ, but my piano teacher had one. So after I had a piano lesson, if I did things right and I could play my scales, she would allow me to do a few things on the organ. I didn't want to play the piano. That was just something I had to do to play the organ. Then I learned that you really have to be a good pianist to do anything on the organ, but that's besides the point. So it was my 10th birthday, or pretty close there, and my first recital happened at the county fair. Now you picture this, my mother, very proud of her 3 sons, one who has raised a sheep, one who has raised a cow, and while the barbecue is going on and the people are out on a Sunday afternoon having barbecue and auctioning off the 4-H animals, this son spotted the fact that the local organ and piano company had brought in a Conn, that's the name of the brand of the organ, Conn, and its artist. Now why they would ever name an organ a Conn artist, I don't know, but that is a fact. You can find there is such a thing as a Conn artist. I wanted to play it. And so the dealer said that I could play it while they were having the barbecue and there would be nobody else around. Well, suddenly this little kid of 10 years old sits down and I could play better than they thought I could. And I had this wonderful little soft piece, and actually it was Jesu Joy of Man's Desire, and I played it eloquently and this kind of stuff. And they knew how to connect the things, so pretty soon through the whole campground, or the whole fairgrounds, I was playing the organ for all of the people there. Well, I hear stories that my mother put a bandana on her head and started running for the car just before I finished the piece and started modulating into the doxology. Okay, it's the only other piece that I knew. And so here, while we're selling our cattle and everything, is Jerry Taylor playing his first recital at the county fair and playing the doxology. This summer, my mother reminds me of that story. I'm 60. You can figure out how long ago that happened. I was not an easy child. The next piece I'd like to play for you is probably the softest piece of the program tonight. It's the Roger Nyquist Adagio. I got to actually study with Roger Nyquist, and about 20 years ago we brought him here to play. He has written a suite for organ. It's going to be Allegro when he ever finishes it, a fantastic Adagio, and a fugue when he ever finishes it. That was his words. So enjoy the flutes of the organ in a very soft piece, Roger Nyquist's Adagio for organ. I kind of got off to a bad start. I pushed the wrong button and didn't do that like, would you mind if I played that again, right? You know, Bach wishes he could have played it like this. Those of you who know how I did that will never tell. Just you think you know what's going on and suddenly, okay, we've only got 2 pieces to go and then we've got a party coming. A soft one and a loud one. The soft one, well, this is a story. I got to play for the Seventh-day Adventist Church General Conference, and since we were down south, went down to Florida to Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church, which had a gigantic brand new organ where Diane Brish was the organist. And I had made arrangements that I wanted to play this organ. So I arrived at my 2 o'clock scheduled time, and they said, "We're sorry, Dr. Kennedy has not finished recording yet. Could you come back in an hour?" Sure, I'll come back in an hour. You know, I've only driven for, 400 hours to get here, so, what's another hour? I come back in another hour. Well, he's having some problems with his sermon. Could you come back in another hour? Sure, I'll be happy to come back. Well, about the 3rd or 4th time, it was like, I know they had choir rehearsal at 7, and this was getting to be like 5 o'clock, and I wasn't going to get very much time. But the lady told me, okay, the organ is over there. just go in, and if you punch 5749, the lights will come on and the organ will come on, and you can have a couple hours on the organ. Okay, so I went over there, and she told me, the organ will be sitting here. Make sure you do the ones that are on the right side. So I went in there and punched the 5749. Nothing happened. So I punched them harder, 5749. Nothing happened. So I pressed them. Oh, but there were ones over on the left side. Oh, stupid me. So I pushed the ones 5749. Lights come on, the organ comes on, and I'm playing this little piece which I'm going to play for you in just a minute. And all of a sudden I had this eerie, weird feeling. And I turned around, and here was this patrolman with a revolver sticking up like this. I had punched in the code for an armed robbery. I just seem to be always at the right place at the wrong time. You know how it goes? Louis Vierne was one of the great organists, and I loved to play. He knew how to make the organ louder than anybody else. And the last piece is one of those really fun pieces, but he also played some stuff with some really wonderful lyrical melodies. And some of the pictures they didn't have a chance to show you. I'm going to play a soft piece, and then I'm going to play the finale, which is the last piece. But this is called a lied, or a song, by Louis Vierne. Could you look right up there as a camera, and that's what they're watching with. Eldon Ford, we know him as Andy, Danny Udrea, Matt Webster, Todd Taylor, and Dan Stevens are back there. Would you give them a hand for all of this video work? The coolest thing about the Kettering Church is there is so much talent here and so many people willing to go into that uncomfortable and do artistic things. It's just, for me, been a fantastic 26 years here, and I've loved it. Following the next piece, there will be an encore, but it will be at the party. The choir's here, and we're going to sing a couple of, just sing. And my son Greg is here, and he's going to MC the show, and so I would invite you after this to go over to the fellowship hall just on the other side of the doors there and enjoy a little reception and a little party and a little mischief and whatever else we manage to get into. But before we do this piece of music I have played all of my life. I played it from my graduation from high school. I played it from my graduation from kindergarten, it seems like. For kind of all of the important events. And I'm kind of glad that at 60 years of age, I can still play it, I think. Okay, let's go party. You know, it's over enough. Let's go.